So will it be, will we know if there's people on there, or are we just doing the program?
I'll be able to see if when people are tuning in. So sometimes it'll tell me who's watching, and then other times it'll just say like, there's 5 people watching or whatnot.
Okay. So are we going to wait for people to tune in, or are we just going to record?
We'll start recording right at 2. So
Okay.
this is kind of funky because it says that it's going live right now, but I'm not. Let me see. Okay.
And then you're going to introduce me. That's when I know when I have to start talking.
Yeah.
Okay.
Mm-hmm. Cool. Why is this being like this? Okay. Cool. All right. So it looks like we are good to go. I'm seeing some comments from Brent Binion. Says it's live, we can see you now.
Yay.
So we'll go ahead and get started. So hello everyone, my name is Katie and I'm the interim director curator here at the Clark Historical Museum. Today we're going to be talking with Shirley Laos, who's our museum's president for our board of directors. And she'll do a little introduction about how she got involved at the museum, the work she does, and more. So if you have any questions, feel free to put them in the comments section. I'll be keeping an eye on it and we'll let Shirley know. But we'll go ahead and pass it on to Shirley.
Okay, great. Ayakwi, Naknow Shirley, Tworthkur, Essie Uskorwich, Make Womachoth, Chure Kichok, Waykaw, Natant Mayor, Yurak Karuk, Essie Chetko, Skuit San Ninapek. So I said, hello, my name is Shirley. I come from the villages of Tworthkur and Uskorwich and a few more, but I live in Trinidad now. And then I said, Skuit San Ninapek, which means I'm very happy to be here today, or right now. So I'm a enrolled member at Trinidad Rancheria, but all my family all 4 of my grandparents come from Yurok and Karuk territory up on the Klamath River. But I've lived at Trinidad my whole life. We got here because my grandmother owned property right next to the Rancheria. So that's why I grew up here. But all my relatives are in all the surrounding tribes. So I got to the Clark Museum. This is my 2nd term. I was a board member about 10 to 12 years ago. And then you have to take a 1 year off before you can serve a 2nd term. So I always intended to come back. But then you know how time goes on, and several years went by, and then somebody asked me to reapply, so I did. So now I'm in my 3rd year of this term on the board, and my 2nd year as board president. So I'm the first female Native American president of the board. I follow Gene Brundine. He was the first male Native American president of the Clark board. So I'm pretty proud of those 2 facts, that not only for our local tribes, but it speaks a lot for the Clark Museum and the existing board that they put enough faith in us to let us to lead the board and to direct the museum at this time. And it's really an honor for me to do it. When they asked me if I would consider it, I said, well, I'm not opposed to it. And they said, I'll take that as a yes. So I said, okay, it's a yes. And then it just went from there. So I really enjoy the Clark. It's one of the things that I really donate my time to. One of my little watchwords, I have a lot of little sayings that I go by, but one of them is, if you're going to volunteer, then truly volunteer. Put your time into it, where your interest and your words are. So I always say, if you're going to volunteer, then volunteer. And I think my family knows that too, because I call it Army volunteer when I get them to do things for me. So just a little bit about myself. Beyond my tribal affiliation, I went to Humboldt State University and earned a double degree there in elementary education and Native American studies. So I think I'm an educator at heart, because even before I went to school, I was always working in elementary schools or working for my tribe, doing education. I ran our community tribal youth center for several years. I like to do project-based education because it's more aligned with a tribal, our culture. Nothing is really standalone. Everything is integrated. So I like to just incorporate language, art, practical things, science. Everything is just so melded in the local Yurok and other tribal cultures, like basketry. You can do science, biology, botany, math, geometry. I'm sure you've all seen the baskets at the museum. We have quite an extensive collection of baskets, but you can see the geometry and the math in those baskets. I just brought a few that I could put by me here. This one doesn't really show a big pattern because it's more of a flat plate. It's a lapsao, but you could do a whole lesson on geometry, math, or anything, just using this one basket. So I like to do project-based in all my work, but underlying everything is the culture. No matter what I do or what presentations that I present, I always incorporate Yurok language words or small sentences. And I try to teach people just to say basic words like, hello, my name is, thank you, those kind of things. Or the names of the baskets, like this one that I just showed, lapsao. So I try to teach them at least those basic words. I'm by no means a fluent speaker. I'm still a beginner, really. My grandmother was a fluent speaker. She spoke Yurok. My mom could speak it, but she didn't really teach us. That was the era of the boarding schools, so they didn't really pass it on. But my great-grandmother, Daisy Yokta Van Pelt, was a full-blood Yurok, and she spoke Yurok as her first language, and then she spoke English after her children went to school and learned English. So as a kid, I heard the Yurok language all the time, even though we didn't speak it as children, but we could hear it. So we knew the rhythm of it. So that's a little bit about me and about my role at the museum. What I really like to do at the museum is, of course, be in Neelis Hall. I could spend time with the baskets and the regalia. If I didn't have a full-time job, a day job, I probably would be spending a lot more time in that room. There's a lot to do there. Even though we have our employees, we always have our volunteers, our board, just a whole team of people, a whole network standing behind our employees to help get all the work done at the Clark. So in Neelis Hall, there's a lot of behind the scenes work, what we do. And we have a Neelis Hall committee. And that committee is comprised of local Native people. So there's two board members on that, myself and Rachel Sundberg. She's UROC and she's enrolled here at Trinidad Rancheria also, and a board member. So we're both co-chairs of that committee. And what we do is guide the Neelis Hall Registrar Curator in their work, in the exhibits and everything that they need to do. We meet monthly. We recently instituted within the last 18 months, spiritual care of the baskets. The Clark has a good museum-based professional level of care. But what we are trying to teach the board, the museum clients, and just the general public, that there's a lot more to caring for the baskets in the Regalia collection than just the museum protocols. There's a spiritual care, a cultural care, and just a whole nother level, because we believe that everything is living and it has its own life. All the baskets came from living plants and materials. The regalia, the dresses came from a living animal, the leather from the deer. The pine nuts, like in my necklace here, they came from a living tree. So everything had a source, its beginning, its first life as a live thing. So we believe that it has that same essence in its present life. So what we instituted in our Neelis Hall collection was we would open up the doors and the cases and let some air in and let the items breathe. And this is when the museum is closed. We also burn root. Root is one of our prayer items. The smoke carries prayer up. And so what, and other uses. And so what we do periodically is we'll burn root for the cases and all the items in there. Before we did that, we did talk with the fire marshal and did a test run just so we know that it wouldn't set off the fire alarms, and it didn't. And then the other thing we do for the spiritual care is we'll have Rachel, and primarily Rachel, but other people come in and sing native songs to the items. And they just need to be like visited or handled. So the items that aren't on display, we get those out on a regular basis, examine them, clean them, make sure everything's still in good repair. We do inventories, and it takes a lot of stuff, a lot of time and work to do just the inspection. On one dress apron, it had like 2,000 strands of shells, beads, and leather. And so we had to count and inspect every single strand, because some of them had multiple strands on just one little started with one strand on the top. By the time it got to the bottom, it had many strands. And so it takes a lot of time and care to do all that. And so you, even if you're a regalia maker, it's still a learning process when you look at some of these things and do some of that work. So I find that very interesting. I like to do that. And what I instituted also as the board president was I just committed to being at every Arts Alive. And right now with the coronavirus pandemic, we of course closed like every other business. But what we did when we were open on regular hours, we have Arts Alive in Old Town, Eureka. So the Clark participates. And what I committed to do was to be at every single Arts Alive. That's the first Saturday of every month, and to do some sort of cultural presentation that's hands-on. So I'm there in Neelis Hall, and well, we cleaned pine nuts a couple of times. I also did bear grass braiding. We cleaned mostly it's basket materials. So if it's in the season to be gathered, I'd go out and gather some materials, and I'd bring it in and put it on the table, bring all the necessary tools, which a lot of our tools are rocks. And then spruce roots, Woodwardia fern, black fern, which is maidenhair fern. In its season, I brought that in and put it on the table and then just talked about it, showed people how to clean it. Because when you come into the Clark and you go to Nelis Hall, you see all these baskets, but they're in their cases and they're finished. And then we have some materials sitting there that you can look at, but you don't really get a sense of what's the process that is necessary to pick the item, clean it, process it, and then be able, before you can even weave with it. And then you weave with it and make the basket. So that's been a pretty successful endeavor. We have some junior docents, 2 young girls that help, and they do all these demonstrations with me, and they learn really fast. One is my granddaughter Isabel. She may stop in a little bit to help me close today's chat, and the other one is Genevieve, and I believe she's about 12. Isabel is now 7. She started when she was 5. So those 2 girls really help, and it's such a good thing to see that when kids come into the museum and then kids are teaching them, there's somebody there. So I think that's really, it's a really good thing to have some junior docents. And so we're always looking for other volunteers, adults and youth. Now we're trying to target some high school age kids that might be interested. So if there's anyone out there that wants to learn and help, there's a lot of different ways you can volunteer at the Clark. You can come on Arts Alive, you can come for Friday Night Market, you can come and help us with behind the scenes things like just cleaning or moving things, or you can help guide school tours, things like that. There's a whole bunch of different things that could meet your comfort level and your own experience or your own education level. So don't let the, if you don't want to volunteer for a school tour, don't let that scare you away. There's a lot of other things that we could have that you could do there. So let's look at my list. With the Saturday Arts Alive, we've one thing I want to do in the future is, we didn't do it in the last year and a half. I've been doing it for about 18 months now. One thing that I want to do is to process maple bark for a maple bark skirt. So my doll here that I made 10, 15 years ago at least, maybe even 20 years now, but she has a little miniature maple bark skirt on. So that's one of the things that coming up in this next year, we will have some maple bark on the Saturday night Arts Alive. And then you can see on the doll, she has a miniature, a K-Woy, as to her size and scale. I made this also when I made the skirt. So it's just a little miniature. And I've got some little teeny acorns that I want to put in here just to complete her set. So we do all kinds of things like that. We also do occasionally, we try to have a basket cleaning workshop. That we have one that we want to plan that kind of got sidetracked with all the coronavirus closures. So we will be planning that basket cleaning workshop. So if people have baskets, they can bring them in. We show you how to clean them, or you can just come in and find out how to clean them and then do it yourself at home if you have any baskets in your collection at home that you want to find out more about its materials. And we have some very knowledgeable people on our Nelis Hall committee. They may even be able to look at the basket, and a lot of times they can tell you who made them, that they're that experienced. So that's, always look at the Clark website, because that'll tell you what our upcoming plans are and what we're thinking of doing. So are there any questions at this time, Katie?
I don't see any right now, but it's a good reminder for those of you guys watching. Feel free to send us your questions on the comments. And yeah, so I guess probably a question that people might be wondering is, so for getting involved with something like the board, like how does that work?
Okay, it's a pretty easy process. We seat new board members in January, but the process starts in August. So around July, if you're a potential board member or if you want to join the board and there's vacancies, you put in your interest in July, and it's just a simple one-page form with just a couple questions, really. And then at our August meeting, we'll look at those forms. Our personnel committee or our membership committee will look at that, and then you need to have an existing board member just sign off, like as your sponsor, and that's pretty easy also. And then at our fall meeting in November, we vote on any potential board members and then seat them in January. And they're 6-year terms, and then a mandatory 1 year off, then you can apply for another term after that if there's a vacancy. So it's, and then we meet every other month, and we do encourage and expect our board members to be active volunteers at the Clark. So we have sign-up sheets to come and work at Arts Alive or the Friday night market, or if we have fundraisers, like we've had barbecues in the past, or we participated in a lot of things that Eureka puts on, like the car show, different things that happen around Old Town, we'll participate. So then we just get our board members to volunteer and come and help and just do outreach. And that, you know, it's a fun time, fun social time to do those kind of volunteers also. And we have a pretty good board. I think it's a good place to volunteer and a good place to be on the board. And we always have 1 or 2 vacancies every year, it seems, you know, with the year off clause. And so there's always at least 1 or 2 vacancies. So if you're interested in that, you know, you could just come in. If you're thinking about it, you could come and see us at Arts Alive, and you know, we could tell you more about it, or you know, give you a little tour of the museum. You could just get a feel for what it might be like to be on our board. So we're always open to new board members.
Cool. And so we got a question from Lynn that says, what type of thread is used in modern dressmaking?
Well, like for instance, on the top of this skirt, it's leather underneath, but then I just use like a twine. But most often what is used is a synthetic sinew. And then it depends, you could also put, if you're doing the fringe or the dangles, you could put that directly on leather strips. But to do the sewing, it's usually the synthetic sinew.
Okay. And also kind of on that same line, do you want to talk about the dress project that's going on?
Oh yes, I didn't write that down on my list. Thank you for reminding me, Katie. It's, the Clark has a community dress project right now. So our style of ceremonial dresses, it's a skirt and then what we call an apron. It's a 2-piece dress. In our collection, we have just an apron. It didn't come into the collection with the accompanying skirt. So we have it and we should put it on display. And Rachel did some research on it, and she determined that it was one of her great aunts that had made that skirt. And so it was really a project that she wanted to do. And so we all talked about it and agreed that we would try to make a skirt to finish that dress and make it a complete set. And so it is made out of pine nuts, bear grass, and leather. I think that's all it is. It's a very simple, old older look. It doesn't have any modern glass beads on it. And it's many, many strands of pine nuts. So we got a grant from the Eureka Seroptimus Club to pay for materials. We're also taking donations of materials. So, and some of it we're trying to go out and gather, like some more pine nuts. And we estimated that we need 1,200 pine nuts just to put on the skirt, so it'll match the look of the apron. So after you gather the pine nuts, then they need to be cleaned. And so you'd notch the ends off to open up the interior. Then you have to clean them. We use a paper clip and push all the pine nut meat out. And that takes quite a while because that it's full of a pine nut inside. So you have to get it completely clean. If you don't get it completely clean, it'll attract bugs that'll eat the rest of the pine nut that's in there. So it has to be 100% clean. Otherwise, when the bugs come to eat any pine nut that's left, they could eat your sinew or break it or eat something else that's on your dress, and then you'd have to restring the entire thing. So it's better to be 100% on it at this stage than have to do it all over again, if it's not cleaned properly. So we, right now, the stage we're at with that dressmaking project is outreach and then the pine nut stage. So before we can start putting the dress together, we need to have all the pine nuts processed and cleaned. So that's an exciting project. It's on hold right now because of social distancing. We are encouraging people who are working on that project to just continue cleaning pine nuts at home. So that's something you can do by yourself. But as far as getting to the next stage, we'll have to wait until a little bit later when we can work together. And so the community is invited to come and participate in that project. You just can contact the museum to express your interest and then to see what it is that you can do to help out, whether it's just cleaning pine nuts with us. You can also pick up some and clean them and then bring them back. You can come and do it during Arts Alive, or you could donate pine nuts if you pick them up, different things like that. So just contact the museum if you want to participate in our dress project. So when we're done, that will be, and then we want to make some necklaces too to match the look of that dress. So it will be a complete set. So our goal, which we'll have to make a policy on, but our goal is to then let that dress go to dance. And then it'll be included in a ceremonial dance. That's our end goal. And speaking of that, last year, we did have one of our dresses in our collection participate in a dress walk up at Sumeg Village in Patrick's Point. And our junior docent, Isabel, wore that dress and demonstrated it. And then the Clark was a co-presenter with Trinidad Rancheria in that dress walk. So it's as part of our education and outreach. So the committees that I'm on are education and outreach, Neelis Hall Committee, and marketing. I was on those committees before I was president, but then after I got to be president, I was reminded that the president is on every committee. But some of them I don't have to go to as often, like finance, because the finance people take care of all that. But it's something that I really wasn't aware of when I agreed to be president, that I would have to be on every single committee. But it's not too bad. I don't mind that because I was already on 3 anyway, and we have 6 committees, I think. So it's not that big of a deal.
So we have a couple questions. Dina asks, what are some of the things you would like to accomplish during your tenure as board president?
Oh, thanks. Well, one of the things that we're in the midst of is outreach to tribes. Over the years, the Clark Museum had different relationships with tribes, good, bad, and in between. But one of my goals is to meet personally with each and every tribe, whether it's the tribal council or a cultural committee or an elders committee, whatever they would like, and to do that meeting to ask what can the Clark do for the tribe, what can the tribe help and be a partner with, with us. So far, we've done Trinidad Rancheria and the Karuk tribe. We also visited the collection at United Indian Health. They have a pretty good basket and regalia collection. So we also met with them. So, but we want to meet with tribes or tribal entities in our region. So we still have a few more to schedule. So that is one, and it takes a long time. Our first goal was to get that done in a year. Then we said, well, maybe 2 years. So now everything, again, with the coronavirus, everything is put off a little bit more, but it's still on our list to do. And so we've got it maybe about a quarter of the way done, but to reach out to every tribe and have that meeting and to establish reciprocal relationships and do more things together. And so I'm talking mostly about Neelis Hall because being Native, and that's my more my passion and my background, but with the rest of the museum, the other half is just as important and just as interesting. And even though some of the exhibits and items we have aren't in my experience or my forte, it's still, I learn a lot when I have to help with a tour or, we have our opening. Some of our good exhibits that I really enjoyed was the quilt show exhibit. A couple of years ago, we did the Redwood National Park's 50th anniversary. That was really interesting. The Chinese expulsion, that exhibit, you just learn so much. And when we do a new exhibit, it seems like there's always community members that come in and say, I have this item, I have that item, or I have this letter. Can you look at it? And occasionally, I think Katie will take some things and include it in the exhibit. If it's a missing piece or it can complement something that we have. So all of the exhibits are just so interesting. And I wish more people would come to every opening because that's when you really can get a lot of your questions answered, and because people are there that worked on the exhibit and they may not be there just anytime during the week if you happen to come in. So I would encourage everybody to come to those openings of the new exhibit, the grand opening of them. That's the best time, I think.
And currently with the closures, currently with the closures, since the museum is closed, we do have video tours online. So that's an option for people who want to check out the exhibit, but might not be able to, can't come in. So if you ask questions on the comment sections on those videos, we do get back to you on it. So feel free to ask questions. So we have, speaking of questions, another question. This one's from Dana. She says, what's the most rewarding thing for you so far as a board member?
Oh, well, I think one of the biggest rewarding things, and I have to brag, is my granddaughter being a docent. She, because when I committed, like I said earlier, I committed to doing every Arts Alive night every month, and they just live practically next door to me, and so she would hear me talking about the Clark Museum, and then I'd say, oh, I have to leave, I have to go because I have to go to Arts Alive. And after hearing that for a few months, and she was 5, and she goes, can I go with you? And I said, no, it's work. If you go with me, you have to work, you can't just play around. So she goes, I will. So she came. And after 2 or 3 months of doing that, she just doesn't miss anything. And she started greeting people. She just started mimicking me. If I'd say the same thing every time somebody came in, hello, welcome to the Clark. This is the Neelis Hall. she would start saying that and just doing it. So then she saw everybody wearing their name badges, their Clark Museum name badges. So she said, when do I get my name badge? Not can I have one, but when do I get mine? Because she was helping out. So I bought her one out of my own money, and we gave her a little trainee badge. And then she just kept coming every month. And then one month I was sick, and I said, I just can't go to the Clark. I just can't go. And she goes, but you told me we have to go, and it's Saturday Night Alive or Saturday Night Arts or whatever. And she goes, we have to go. So that was the only time in 2 years that we missed Saturday Night Arts Alive. So I think, and then now we have a second junior docent, and they help each other because they have a little bit of an age gap, so it's complementary. I think that's my most fulfilling personal thing at the Clark, just because it's passing on to the next generation, and just seeing the growth in those two girls as they help out there. But I think I think the incorporating and the education and the enlightenment to our board about adding the things like I was talking about earlier, the spiritual care, that other life way that was missing from the Neelis Hall collection, and getting them to understand why those things need to be put into action. And we didn't just say, oh, we're going to do this. We formulated, this is what's needed, here's how we could do it, and then we approached it to the board in increments, and did it one at a time, but then explained to them and educated them as to why. So I think that's a really big accomplishment, and I'm really thankful that the board accepted all of our recommendations, and now they're in action, in place, and we're just I look forward to more expansion on some of that. So that's a really good example of why we need local Native people to volunteer to be on the board. Because if we didn't volunteer and get on the board, how would we be able to educate and share this information and this knowledge when we have this? The Clark owns this big collection of local Native baskets and regalia. They need that Native cultural knowledge and experience. They need that component. So it's a symbiotic relationship, really. So I think that's one thing that I'm really proud of and really excited about, that is moving forward internally. And then now I think to complete that over the next year will be the external component about the tribal outreach that I described.
Yeah, and kind of along with that, do you want to talk a bit about the Regalia loan program? It's kind of on hiatus right now, but
yeah. So we have a small Regalia loan program. In the past, it was mostly a couple of men's regalia items, and so local dance people could apply to borrow an item or two, and there's just a short form to fill out and then they would borrow the item, but a prerequisite is they have to know how to handle it, how to properly care for it, what condition it needs to be kept in, all of those steps. And so, like Katie mentioned, it is on hiatus right now. We're looking at revamping and updating the policy around it, because we saw, as we started examining, some of the items needed to be repaired. And so we thought this is a good time not only to repair the item, but also to update our paperwork that goes along with it, because we're thinking that we need to add a little more controls, maybe take photographs, not just a written description of the item that we loan, and then a little bit more tighter controls as far as insurance, because if something does get damaged, now usually we just have the regalia or the dance person repair it for us. But so we want to tighten up a little bit of those protocols. And we don't have any women's items that we loan, but our end goal is to make a policy and protocol for loaning some women's items. But a start, and we don't have the policy written yet, but a start would be this new dress that we're working on to go with the old apron. So that could be made expressly for the start and the beginning of a woman's loan regalia. And so our little test run was when Isabel wore the Clark dress as a partner presenter in the dress walk at Sumeg Village. And Rachel and I, since we're both board members, we were with that dress at all times. And we also gave Isabel protocol lessons beforehand so that she would know exactly how she needed to act and how to care for the items while she was wearing them. So we just need to get all that down in writing. And so I'm hoping over the next year or two that we will have that in place after we finish the dress that we're working on. And maybe that'll be the big debut of a new program at the Clark. And so that's one thing that we'll be talking to the tribes about. Is this something that I'm sure that they would like to see that, because we always had the request for the men's items, and we only had 3 head rolls that we had on that men's program, and we always had requests every single year. That wasn't a year that went by that we didn't get a request for that, except for now is the hiatus on it. So that's a work in progress.
And can you talk a little bit? Whoa, why my computer sound like that? Can you talk a little bit about where that Regalia loan program started or how it started?
Well, Katie, I'm not sure, because even though I was on the board previously, it was already in place when I came.
Okay.
So I'm not sure about how it started, but I can say that not every regalia item in the Clark collection can be loaned. Sometimes when people donate their collection or their items, sometimes they'll specify this will not leave the museum, this will not be loaned out for any reason. And then it's an agreement that's in place when they donate. We won't be able to loan or share anything that isn't in good repair, or if it's a one-of-a-kind thing that we just can't take the risk. Even if it's in excellent repair, if it's a one-of-a-kind, if it's so valuable, then to the collection, then that won't be on the list. But we have enough items that we can go through the inventory and make an assessment of what could be loaned if we had the policy in place. And so on the women's side, the Neelis Hall Committee did do that. We assessed all the caps, all the ceremonial caps, we assessed the dresses, and we made a preliminary list of what could possibly go on that loan list and what wouldn't be, for all of our various reasons. After we did the inspection, the assessment, and the discussion, then we made that list. So that's an internal working document right now until we go to the next step of establishing that policy. And on the Neelis Hall Committee, I just want to say that we really strive to get a cross section of all the local tribes represented, and an equal number of, or pretty close to an equal number of men and women, because we have men's regalia and women's regalia in our collection, and women don't touch the men's items and vice versa. So when somebody needs to work on them or move them, then we need a man to do that. So we do have a good group of local Native people that are on that committee, and roughly a 50-50 makeup of male and female, just so we can get, all the methods or needs covered.
And I guess oh, that's weird. Okay. So let's see. If you could pick out a dream exhibit to see either in the main hall or Neelis Hall, or like a crossover between the two, what would it be?
Well, if it was the true dream, we would need a lot bigger space. So in our confines of our local, of our present building, gosh, that's a tough one. What I like is, and we've done little bits and pieces of this before, but what I like is to see compare and contrast, like a redwood canoe and a modern boat, baskets and dishes, and we've done something like that on a smaller scale. But if it was, a dream exhibit, it would almost be like having a Sumac village, where you had a larger house. Though we have a pretty big house exhibit, it's a pretty good size. But I would almost like to have taking our things that we have now and more reworking them into a scene, like a diorama, not just one thing here and one thing there. So maybe if we could move the house and then put the canoe by it and put all the little things, not little things, but all the items together. So it's more like a village scene, and things in progress, like drying fish and basket materials and acorn soaking. I mean, that's pretty grandiose, but I think that would be really good.
Yeah, I'm also a fan of dioramas.
Yeah. But then we'd have to put it all to scale, like our house, which is pretty big, but then the canoe is full size. It's an actual full size canoe.
Yeah.
You'd still get the feel, but they're so out of scale. It would be nice to have a good diorama that's to scale, and then along with maybe another a contrast. Put that right there. So I've just been, Isabel, get your necklace. So I've just been joined by our junior docent, Isabel, and she's also, she goes to the Yurok language classes with me, and I do presentations to schools quite a bit. So at this past year, I worked with Laurel Tree Charter School, and I did a four session beginning Yurok language, because that's about where I am. So what I know I could teach, but I can't do full sentences very well, or converse, but I know enough to help the beginning stages. So Isabel did go with me to the Laurel Tree Charter School. And again, like she does at the Clark, it's really neat to have kids teaching kids, because they just respond, and it's a good intergenerational. I like to do intergenerational. I have a event that was planned here at Trinidad Rancheria by a committee about 15 or 20 years ago now, and it's called Passport to our Past, Present, and Future. And everybody gets a little passport, and then you go to the destinations. There's 11 destinations, and each destination has a page in the passport, and it's all about the Yurok culture. So it has language, canoe, basketry, men's and women's regalia, language, food, medicinal plants. Salmon has its own category, not apart from food, and then modern inspirations. So, and then we set it up. We take over a whole school gym sometimes, or we've done it outdoors, and it's the Rancheria started it to do a California Indian Day presentation at the casino, and then they did it for 3 or 4 years, and then they decided to do other things. So I just took it over, continued it rather, as a family presentation. So, and it's intergenerational. That's what reminded me of it. So me, all my sisters, my nieces and nephews, my great nieces and nephews, and all 5 of my grandchildren, my sisters, all of their grandchildren, those are my great nieces and nephews. We all present it together, and it's a big event. We've done it at the Clark twice. So some of you might see that, or we'll probably do it again. We didn't do it last year because I wanted to give it a year off and let other people have a chance to showcase their presentations. But the Passport to our Past, Present, and Future is one thing that's really, it's a pretty awesome thing that we have. It's not housed at the Clark, but we're partners with the Clark, now in doing that. So, Isabel. Maybe Isabel can say a few words on what she does at the museum as a docent. Introduce yourself.
Now.
Speak up.
Now, Isabel. Sheree Kichak.
Okay, so she lives here in Trinidad too. So there's just other people, we can't see them. We're on Facebook, you know about Facebook. So tell people what you do at the museum as a junior docent. Just a couple sentences.
I help people and show them around.
You show them around. Tell them a little bit about when you had your own display. The dress
The dress.
that you wore. Where did you wear it?
For a dress walk.
And so we took a picture at the dress walk, and then Brittany, our Niles Hall registrar or curator, put it up in a display. So the dress was on display with Isabel's picture when she was wearing it there, and then some explanation about what happened and what a dress walk is. And so that was up for about 6 months. And so Isabel was able to give tours or explanations of that case right there on every Arts Live that I talked about earlier. So she was on hand to explain her little display while it was up. So that was a good follow-up, some continuity. So the things that we do as our education outreach, we can follow it up with a different way or a different look at the same thing. So how long have you been doing junior docent work? You started when you were 5. How old are you now?
7.
So how many years? 2. 2 years, 2.5 years. So can you just, how do you say goodbye? True. Okay, thank you, Isabel. So what else do we need to cover as we wrap up here?
Let's see. So I don't see any more questions, but we did get, let's see. So Jane said a while ago, hi, Cheryl, thanks for presenting.
Jane, did they give a last name?
Jane Carlton.
Oh, Jane, okay.
Yeah. And then Dana says, thank you so much for hosting this segment. I'm learning so much from these. That's always good to hear.
Well, you know, that is just one of my underlying, I don't even want to say it's a goal. My mom was a teacher, and so I think I inherited some of those tendencies just in my personality. I'm the oldest girl, so you know, you always have to help cook and babysit your younger siblings. So again, there's a more reinforcement of that kind of helping and teaching. And then just being involved in the culture, like I was explaining earlier, it's just part of me. And so I take every opportunity to educate and share and just let people know, because the more they know about differences in culture, differences in people and groups, the more understanding and acceptance there'll be, in addition to just more knowledge and just, you know, finding out interesting things or information. So that's just part of my personality. I always work it into everything that that I say and do or present. So
I definitely agree. Yeah, it's I mean, it's part of the mission for the museum to educate the public, and I feel like that's pretty darn important.
yeah,
and it's a lot of fun.
There's that big tie right there. Yeah, that well said, Katie. That it exactly. So there is a good. That's probably why it's a good fit for me and why I enjoy the Clark so much.
Yeah.
But you articulated it just right.
Yeah. Well, great. I think that's a great great note to wrap it up on. Thanks for chatting with the public through Facebook Live. And yeah, thank you for all those out there who came by to watch. Shout out to the people that are going to watch this over time. And if you're liking the stuff that we're doing here, let us know in the comments. Feel free to send us an email or whatnot. We are accepting donations through our Facebook page, through our PayPal. We have membership options, all kinds of different things. But yeah, if you're liking what we're doing, then feel free to share it with others. That's kind of the best way. You can help us spread the message of what we're doing, even though we're close to the public right now. So with that, thanks again, Shirley. Next week.
Walk slow.
Next week, we'll be having Lynn, who's one of our board members and a school tour docent. It's going to be talking about her volunteer work here at the museum. So with that, thank you. And we'll see you around, Shirley.
All right, bye.